The county auction house outside Missoula, Montana, smelled of dust and sadness. Under the harsh lights, a battered German shepherd lay still on the concrete floor. His body was covered in scars, his ribs visible, his eyes empty. Sneers and laughter echoed around the room. "Not worth a dime," someone muttered. "Damaged goods," another voice added. The auctioneer's voice cracked, desperate. "Starting bid at $50. Anyone?" The crowd laughed, ready to move on. A chair scraped loudly in the back. A man in a worn Marine Corps jacket stood. Ethan Carter, 34 years old, stepped forward. His voice, low but steady, cut through the noise. "It'll take him," he said. The room fell silent, the laughter dying quickly. No one understood the weight of this moment. Ethan had seen too much pain in his own life. 3 years back from war, still haunted by ghosts. The auctioneer hurriedly closed the sale. $200 and a waiver. "Here's yours," he said. No background check. No questions. Ethan signed without reading. He took the worn leather leash into his hands. Ethan crouched 6 feet away from the dog. He spoke softly, voice calm and patient. "Hey, buddy. I am Ethan. Not gonna hurt you." The German shepherd twitched, muscles tense. Dr. Rachel Morgan, a local vet, watched quietly. She had tried to save this dog before, but failed. The dog's eyes flickered a spark of recognition. Suddenly, he lunged with teeth flashing. Ethan didn't move an inch. They stared at each other, soldier to soldier. The dog stopped inches from Ethan's throat. Slowly, he backed away, confusion in his broken gaze. Getting the dog to move was a new battle. The German shepherd refused to walk. Ethan didn't pull or force him. He simply sat on the cold floor. He talked quietly about the ranch, about open fields. An hour passed. Then 2. The auctioneer announced they were closing soon. "Well, leave when he's ready," Ethan replied. As sunset painted the windows golden, the dog moved. First one step, then another. By the time they reached Ethan's truck, he walked beside him. Not trusting, but willing. At the ranch, Ethan prepared a safe space in the barn. Fresh straw, clean water, an open door. But the German shepherd refused to enter. He trembled, staring at the barn with terror. "All right," Ethan said, voice soft. "Well, do it your way." He sat on the porch steps. The dog lay near the fence, keeping his distance. Neither of them slept that night. Dawn broke over the Montana mountains, lighting 2 broken souls. Rachel Morgan, watching from afar, whispered, "Good luck," unsure if she meant it for the man or the dog. This was only the beginning. The ranch was quiet and vast. It should have felt like peace, but for Ethan, it was a prison of memories. He woke in cold sweats every night. The horses grazed in silence, the land untouched. The German shepherd stayed by the fence line. He refused food, refused shelter. The barn triggered something dark inside him. Ethan didn't force him. He simply sat nearby, talking softly about nothing. Rachel Morgan visited early that morning. She brought medical supplies and cautious hope. "How was the night?" she asked gently. Hard, Ethan admitted. "But he's trying." Rachel attempted a simple examination. The dog reacted violently, hackles raised. He backed into the fence, teeth flashing. "This isn't aggression," Rachel said quietly. "This is trauma. Deep, violent trauma." They didn't press him any further. He needed time. And patience. The dog refused food for 2 full days. Ethan kept setting it out anyway. He spent hours sitting in the dirt, telling stories, whispering promises, never reaching out, never rushing. Sometimes the dog would pace. Sometimes he would just watch Ethan silently. Rachel called to check in. "If they're too far gone," she started. "Has not," Ethan cut her off. "Has just lost. Like I was." That evening, a storm rolled in fast. Thunder cracked over the mountains like cannon fire. The German shepherd panicked instantly. He slammed into the fence, bloodying his shoulder. He bolted into the night, a dark blur. Ethan ran after him, soaked by the rain. Mud sucked at his boots. With every step, flashes of lightning lit the dog's terrified form. Finally, the dog trapped himself in a drainage ditch. Cornered, trembling eyes wide with terror. Ethan didn't grab him. He simply sat down in the mud and spoke. "I know what it's like," Ethan said softly, "when every sound is a threat, when trust feels like a death sentence. The dog listened, ears twitching through the storm. Hours passed with rain pounding the earth. Finally, the dog took one tiny step toward him. Then another. They didn't touch. But they walked back to the ranch together. Two broken warriors. Not healed, but no longer completely alone. A week after the storm, Rachel returned. This time she brought a manila envelope. The military released some of his records, she said. Ethan spread the documents across his kitchen table. The German Shepherd watched from the doorway, wary but curious. His real name was Rex. 3 tours in Afghanistan with Marine Special Operations. Highly decorated. Then 6 months missing from the records. A black hole where a hero story should have been. Ethan traced the papers with trembling fingers. Training logs showed brutal hours, 20 hours a day. No dog could survive that without breaking. Rachel pulled out another paper, hesitant. "There's something else," she said. The last deployment dates matched Ethan's final tour. Memories flooded back, ambushes, loss, guilt. "He was there," Ethan whispered. "The day we lost Baker's team." The connection between man and dog deepened. They had survived the same battlefield. Different species. Same scars. As they talked, the dog grew agitated. He paced, whined, scratched at his neck. Ethan approached slowly, speaking calmly. Under thick fur, his fingers found metal. An embedded ID tag forgotten and grown over. They rushed him to Rachel's clinic. Under sedation, she removed it carefully. The name was barely visible. Handler Major James Slade. Ethan's blood ran cold. Slade was a name wrapped in whispered horror stories. The man who had ruined lives. Ethan stared at the tag, heart pounding. Slade was discharged for ethics violations, he said. Rachel nodded grimly. Unproven. Buried. Protected by high-ranking officials. Echo, groggy from sedation, whimpered softly. Pain and fear still lived inside him. Rachel placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We need to find Slade," she said. "Find out what happened." Ethan clenched his fists. "We will. For him. For all of them." A quiet promise was made. Justice would come. That night, Echo lay curled by the porch, not touching Ethan, but closer than ever before. He chose to stay near, not from fear but trust. Ethan watched the stars scattered across the Montana sky. Their journey wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about truth. About exposing the darkness that had tried to bury heroes like Echo. About fighting for those who couldn't speak. Their battle had just begun, and this time they would fight together. The ranch felt tense after the discovery. Ethan moved carefully, always watching the horizon. Echo was different too. More alert, more protective. One evening, headlights appeared on the long dirt road. 2 men stepped out dressed in civilian clothes. They smiled too easily. "We're interested in buying your dog," one said. "Well, pay good money." Echo growled low, deep from his chest. Ethan stood firm. "His not for sale," he said coldly. The men's faces hardened quickly. "You don't understand," the taller one said. "Some dogs are too valuable to be left alone." Ethan's voice didn't waver. "This is private property. Leave now." Echo stood between Ethan and the strangers, every muscle ready for a fight. The men backed away, but not before warning. This isn't over. Their threat hung heavy in the evening air. Rachel and Agent Foster were called immediately. The danger was real now. Agent Marcus Foster arrived at dawn. He carried a thick folder and serious eyes. "We've been investigating Major Slade for a year," he said. "Your dog might be the last living witness." Foster revealed chilling numbers. 27 dogs eliminated in 3 years, all labeled unstable after resisting Slade's brutal methods. Echo had survived only by accident. A mistake Slade was desperate to erase. The fight was bigger than Ethan thought. It reached into high military offices. Powerful people were protecting the monster. That night they patrolled the property carefully. Echo's body was tense, his senses sharp. Suddenly a window shattered a warning shot. Echo launched at Ethan, knocking him out of harm's way. Foster drew his weapon. Rachel hid behind the kitchen counter. Echo moved through the house, methodically checking every room. His training was undeniable. Not out of fear this time, out of loyalty. Law enforcement arrived too late. The attackers disappeared into the night, but the message was clear. Slade wasn't backing down. The ranch became a fortress. Sheriff Brooks ordered regular patrols. The veteran community organized watches. Rachel, Ethan, and Foster gathered evidence day and night. Echo stayed close, never far from Ethan's side. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a protector, a partner. As Ethan sat on the porch with Echo that night, he whispered, "You saved my life today, buddy." Echo leaned against him, silent but steady. Their bond had been forged in fear. Now it was strengthened by trust and purpose. They were ready for whatever came next. Word about Echo and Ethan spread quietly through the Montana town. At the local feed store, old veterans whispered about the battered Marine and his dog. Tom Sanders, a Vietnam vet, recognized the haunted look in Echo's eyes immediately. "That dog's been to war," Tom said, simply, his voice rough with memory and pride. The community, still raw from losing its own sons to war, started paying attention. Each day, Echo stayed a little closer to the porch steps, where Ethan sat waiting. He didn't eat from Ethan's hand yet, but he didn't flinch away anymore either. At night, Ethan still heard the dog's restless pacing under the cold Montana stars. Rachel Morgan came by, often bringing supplies and quiet encouragement without pushing too hard. Healing wasn't a straight path. It was slow, uneven, filled with small, fragile victories. Another storm rolled in from the mountains, dark and violent, shaking the earth with thunder. Ethan expected Echo to bolt again, lost in terror, like before running into danger. Instead, when the first crack split the sky, Echo pressed against Ethan's leg, trembling hard. Ethan sat still, letting him lean, whispering the same steady words he used with soldiers. "You're safe, buddy. You're here. You're not alone anymore." The next morning, Echo approached, without needing coaxing or soft words to guide him forward. He let Ethan touch him lightly, just a hand on his shoulder, nothing more. The moment was small, barely a breath, but it was a breakthrough beyond measure. Later that day, Echo accepted food from Ethan's palm, without retreating into a corner first. Trust was no longer just an idea, it was becoming real between them. That night, Echo lay near the porch, instead of guarding the fence like before. His body relaxed in a way Ethan had never seen since the day they met. As Ethan watched the stars flicker over the mountains, he made a silent promise. Whatever it took, no matter how long it took, he would protect Echo too. Together they would find a way forward, one small step at a time. Ethan's mind raced as he paced back and forth in the garage, rereading Emily Parker's testimony. Emily, the widow of a soldier Echo had saved in Afghanistan, had provided the final piece of evidence needed to expose Major Slade. The account of how Slade had manipulated military policies, abusing both soldiers and war dogs, was harrowing. But Emily's words were more than just testimony. They were a cry for justice, a call to right the wrongs done to innocent lives. The weight of the moment was not lost on Ethan. He knew that this battle would not just expose a corrupt officer, it would change the way the world viewed military working dogs, the silent heroes who often paid the highest price for their service. Echo had already suffered so much at the hands of Slade. Now was time to ensure no other dog would endure the same fate. Ethan looked at Echo, who was resting calmly in the corner of the garage, his strong frame at peace, despite the trials they faced. Echo had always been a soldier, trained to fight, to endure. But now Echo was more than just a weapon. He was a living testament to resilience. His eyes met Ethan's, and in that silent exchange the two of them understood that the road ahead would not be easy. They had to expose Major Slade, and they had to do it now. The demonstration Slade had planned for the following day would be a grand spectacle. Slade's security dogs, the pinnacle of his abusive practices, paraded in front of the nation. It was to be his crowning achievement, a way to cement his place as the leader of the industry. But Ethan wasn't going to let that happen. He had spent months collecting evidence, piecing together the fragmented stories of former soldiers, animal rights activists, and military personnel who had witnessed Slade's crimes firsthand. With the evidence now in their hands, Ethan and his allies prepared for the confrontation. They knew that revealing the truth would be dangerous. Slade wasn't a man to be easily outmaneuvered. He was ruthless, with connections that ran deep. But Ethan was determined. He wasn't just fighting for justice for Echo. He was fighting for all the dogs that had been mistreated, for every soldier who had ever lost a partner, for every person who had been silenced by corruption. "Are you ready, boy?" Ethan asked, looking down at Echo. The dog's ears perked up, and he wagged his tail once, the most subtle sign of agreement. It was more than enough for Ethan. They were ready. As the day of the demonstration drew nearer, Ethan met with his allies, journalists, former military members, animal rights activists, and even a few brave soldiers who had once served under Slade. Each person brought with them a piece of the puzzle. Together, they would form an unbreakable front, a force strong enough to stand up to Slade and expose the truth. Ethan could feel the weight of their support. He wasn't alone in this fight. They were all fighting for the same cause, to take down a man who had built his career on cruelty and lies. The team had devised a plan. They would infiltrate the demonstration, blend in with the crowd, and then when the moment was right, they would strike. The moment Slade began his speech, they would present the evidence, the photos, the recordings, the testimonies. There would be no way for Slade to deny the truth any longer. His empire would crumble, and the world would know what kind of man he truly was. The night before the demonstration was filled with a sense of quiet anticipation. Ethan sat in the dim light of the kitchen going over the plan one more time. His mind was sharp, but there was an underlying anxiety he couldn't shake. Tomorrow would be the most important day of their lives, he knew that. If they succeeded, they would expose the corruption of a man who had held too much power for too long. But if they failed, Slade wouldn't hesitate to destroy them. Echo lay by his side, resting peacefully oblivious to the tension in the air. Ethan placed a hand on Echo's head, finding comfort in the dog's calm presence. He had come to rely on Echo's strength in ways he couldn't describe. The dog wasn't just his partner. He was his anchor, his constant. "I don't know what tomorrow holds, buddy," Ethan murmured, his voice heavy with emotion. "But no matter what happens, we've done everything we can. We've come this far. We're not turning back." Echo raised his head, staring into Ethan's eyes with a knowing gaze. There was no turning back. As dawn broke, Ethan and his team began to prepare. They had spent weeks organizing, making sure every detail was accounted for. There was no room for error. The demonstration would begin in just a few hours, and they had to be in position. Echo stood by Ethan's side, his body alert, ready to spring into action. The quiet tension of the morning was palpable, but there was also a sense of purpose. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Slade's reign was coming to an end. The grand stadium was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Banners proudly displayed Slade's name, his dogs, and his brand. It was a perfect image of power, control, and security. But beneath the surface, something dark lingered. The crowd didn't know it yet, but today would mark the end of Major Slade's empire. Ethan and Echo stood at the back of the stadium, blending in with the crowd. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Slade take the stage. The man was all smiles, all charm, basking in the adoration of those who were ignorant of his crimes. Ethan felt a wave of disgust wash over him. It was time. He and Echo moved into position, their allies scattered throughout the crowd, waiting for the signal. As Slade began speaking, Ethan stepped forward, microphone in hand. The audience fell silent as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan's voice rang out steady and strong, "what you're seeing here today is a lie. These dogs are not here to serve you. They are victims, just like the soldiers they've been forced to protect." The crowd shifted, murmurs of confusion spreading like wildfire. Ethan continued, unveiling the hidden truths of Slade's operation. He spoke of the countless dogs that had been mistreated, of the deaths, the injuries, the horrific training methods used by Slade to make his dogs into weapons. He spoke of Echo's own story, how he had been used as a test subject, how Slade had manipulated every aspect of the system for his own gain. Echo stood beside Ethan, his presence commanding attention. The dog was more than just a witness to the truth. He was the truth, a living testament to everything that had been wrong with Slade's operation. As Ethan spoke, Echo demonstrated his skills, showing the crowd the loyalty and bravery that had been exploited by Major Slade. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Slade's face twisted into a snarl, his smile faltering as he tried to regain control of the situation. The crowd's confusion turned to anger, and Slade's carefully crafted image began to crumble. "You're lying!" Slade shouted, his voice shaking with fury. "This dog is a traitor! You don't know anything about me, about my program." But Ethan was undeterred. "The only traitor here is you, Slade. You've been using these dogs for profit, for power. You've turned them into weapons, and you've ruined lives in the process." Slade's face contorted in rage, but the truth had already been laid bare. The audience's eyes shifted from Slade to Echo, who stood unwavering at Ethan's side. The tide was turning. With the truth exposed, chaos erupted. Slade's supporters tried to rush the stage, but Ethan's team was ready. Journalists captured every moment, documenting the explosive confrontation. The military's corruption was no longer hidden in the shadows. Slade was finished. Ethan's heart pounded as the crowd began to rally behind him, their anger directed at Slade and his operations. The once mighty man was now a villain, his empire built on lies and cruelty. The demonstration had turned into a rally for justice, and Echo had become the symbol of that fight. But the battle wasn't over. Slade would still fight back. He had power connections and a lot to lose. But for now, Ethan allowed himself to feel a small victory. They had exposed the truth. As the crowd dispersed, Ethan stood at the center of the stage, Echo by his side. It wasn't over, but the first victory had been won. They had exposed Major Slade for who he truly was, and there was no turning back now. The road ahead would be difficult, but with the truth on their side, they could finally begin the fight for justice. The night after the demonstration, as the world began to process the shocking revelations about Major Slade, a terrible fire broke out at the kennel facility owned by Slade's company. The building, large and reinforced to hold dozens of military dogs, was quickly engulfed in flames. Smoke billowed into the night sky, a signal that something catastrophic was happening within. Ethan received the call just as he was beginning to unwind, still processing the victory of the previous day. His blood ran cold when he heard the news. The fire wasn't just an accident, it was intentional. Slade, desperate to cover his tracks, had set the fire in a final attempt to destroy the evidence and silence those who stood against him. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed to the scene, Echo at his side. The fire department was already on site, but they were struggling to control the flames. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest as he thought of the innocent dogs still trapped inside. Ethan didn't think twice. He knew Echo was a dog of action, a partner who would follow him into any danger. The fire was consuming everything in its path, but the desperate cries of the dogs from within the building spurred them into action. They had no time to waste. "Come on, Echo!" Ethan shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. Without hesitation, Echo darted into the smoke-filled building, Ethan following close behind. The air was thick with heat and ash, but Ethan's training kicked in. He knew how to navigate through chaos, and he trusted Echo implicitly. They fought their way through the smoke and fire, guided by the sound of frantic barking. It was impossible to see, but Echo's nose was a beacon. Ethan's heart raced as they moved deeper into the building. They had to find the dogs and get them out, or else the fire would claim even more innocent lives. After what felt like an eternity, Echo found the first dog, a young German shepherd trapped behind a wall of debris. The dog was terrified, its eyes wide with panic, but it was alive. Echo nudged the dog gently, urging it to follow him. Ethan, coughing and struggling to breathe in, the thick smoke helped coax the dog to safety. But they weren't done yet. The fire was spreading, and there were still more dogs trapped inside. Echo Ever, the soldier, didn't hesitate. He led Ethan to another corner of the building, where two more dogs were stuck in a collapsed kennel. With a quick, powerful lunge, Echo tore through the debris, freeing the dogs. But as he did, a piece of falling wood struck him in the side, sending him crashing to the ground. Ethan's heart nearly stopped as he saw Echo lying motionless on the floor. The fire raged around them, but all that mattered in that moment was Echo. He rushed to the dog's side, his hands trembling as he checked for signs of life. There was a pulse. Echo was alive, but barely. His injuries were severe. Ethan knew they didn't have much time. The fire was closing in, and they couldn't wait for the fire department to clear the building. He pulled Echo up, supporting his injured partner as they staggered towards the exit. Every step was agony, but Echo was determined. The dog, though injured, pressed on each movement, a testament to his strength and resilience. With one final push, they made it outside just as the roof of the building collapsed in on itself. The fire department immediately rushed to treat the dogs they had rescued, but Ethan's focus was entirely on Echo. His partner had saved so many lives, now it was time for Ethan to return the favor. Echo was rushed to the veterinary clinic, and the whole community rallied to save him. News of his heroics spread like wildfire, and people from all walks of life, Soldiers, animal lovers, veterans, and everyday citizens came together to offer support. The fire had been a tragedy, but Echo's courage in the face of certain death had inspired something much larger than just one rescue. It sparked a movement. Ethan sat by Echo's side in the clinic, his hands gently resting on the dog's head. "You did it, buddy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved them all." Echo's tail gave a weak wag, a small sign of his spirit still fighting to stay strong. The community had already begun to heal, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Echo's injuries would take time to heal, but they were in this together. The fire at the kennel facility wasn't just a tragedy. It was the final nail in Major Slade's coffin. As the days passed, Ethan and his team gathered more evidence, some from classified files and others from journals that Slade had kept hidden. These documents revealed Echo's true heroism in Afghanistan, showing how Slade had manipulated the military's working dog program for personal gain, sacrificing innocent lives to further his own ambitions. Ethan couldn't believe what he was reading. Slade had orchestrated so many of the atrocities, and now it was all coming to light. The community's outcry grew louder, demanding justice for Echo, for the dogs, and for the soldiers who had been sacrificed under Slade's reign. It was no longer just about one man, it was about a corrupt system that needed to be overhauled. As more and more people came forward with their stories, it became clear that Slade was not an isolated case. The entire military working dog program was flawed, built on a foundation of exploitation and abuse. Ethan, along with other former soldiers, veterinarians, and animal rights activists, called for a complete overhaul of the system. They wanted better care, better training, and above all, a commitment to the welfare of the dogs who serve their country. Echo's story became the rallying cry for this new movement. The nation began to pay attention. Veterans spoke out about their experiences, recounting how the military had ignored the well-being of their canine partners, treating them as tools, rather than living, breathing creatures who deserved love and respect. The pressure on the government and military officials was immense. With Slade behind bars, the door was open for reform. The media coverage of Echo's story and the fire had captivated the nation, turning public opinion in favor of better treatment for military working dogs. The military began to face scrutiny like never before. Ethan watched as the momentum built. The changes were slow, but they were coming. Laws were passed, committees were formed, and a new framework for the treatment of military dogs began to take shape. But for Ethan, the fight wasn't just about policy. It was about Echo, about ensuring that the sacrifices these dogs had made would never be forgotten. The media played a crucial role in the movement. News outlets from across the country covered the story of Echo's rescue, his injuries, and his journey to recovery. They reported on the systemic abuse within the military dog program, putting pressure on the government to enact change. Ethan gave several interviews, and he made it clear that this wasn't just a battle for Echo. It was a battle for all the canines who had served and sacrificed. Echo's face became a symbol of the fight for justice, his story spreading across the globe. People from all over the world reached out to offer support, and a network of advocates for military dogs began to form. The fight for Echo had sparked a revolution. In the end, the reforms came. The military's working dog programs were restructured with a focus on the health and well-being of the animals involved. New standards were put in place for their training, and they were given better treatment with proper veterinary care and rest periods. Ethan stood by Echo's side as they watched the changes unfold. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The system had been broken, but now there was hope for a better future. Ethan and Echo's fight for justice had come to a close, but their work was far from over. Together they founded the Second Chance Canine Rehabilitation Center, a place where retired military dogs could find a new life away from the trauma of their past service. The center became a sanctuary, a place where these brave dogs could heal and be loved. The center quickly gained national attention, drawing in donors and volunteers who were inspired by the legacy that Echo and Ethan had created. It was a place of healing not just for the dogs, but for the veterans who had served alongside them. Many of the soldiers who had been part of Echo's journey found comfort in working with the dogs, helping them adjust to civilian life. Echo became more than just a dog. He was a symbol of healing, of resilience, and of the bond between man and animal. His story was told far and wide, and people across the world recognized the importance of treating military dogs with the respect and care they deserved. Echo's legacy was cemented when he was honored at a national ceremony where he received a medal for his bravery and service. The applause that rang out in that moment wasn't just for Echo. It was for every dog who had ever served in war, for every dog who had been forgotten. As time passed, the Second Chance K9 Rehabilitation Center became a beacon of hope. Dogs who had suffered in the line of duty were given a second chance at life. Many were adopted into loving homes, while others remained at the center serving as therapy dogs for veterans in need. The impact of the center was profound, touching the lives of both the dogs and the humans who had fought alongside them. Ethan and Echo continued their work side by side, building a legacy that would last for generations. They had changed the world, and they were just getting started. The movement that Ethan and Echo had started grew into something much larger. Across the country, communities began to implement their own programs for retired military dogs, following the model that Ethan and Echo had set. The world began to see these dogs not just as tools of war, but as heroes in their own right, deserving of the same respect and care as the soldiers who served alongside them. Echo, though retired from active duty, remained a powerful force for change. He continued to inspire his story, spreading around the globe, touching hearts and changing minds. In the years that followed, Echo and Ethan's legacy lived on. They had given a voice to the voiceless, and in doing so they had changed the way the world saw military working dogs. The Second Chance K9 Rehabilitation Center continued to thrive, and more dogs found new lives, their traumas healed through the love and care they received. Echo, now an old dog, lay beside Ethan as they watched the sunset together. The fight for justice had been long, but it had been worth every moment. "You did it, buddy," Ethan whispered. "We did it." And Echo, with his gentle eyes, gave one last wag of his tail. If Echo's incredible journey has touched your heart, if you believe in the power of second chances and the unbreakable bond between humans and dogs, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this story of courage, sacrifice, and healing with your friends and family. Let's spread the message that every hero, whether human or canine, deserves respect and love. Stay tuned for more heartwarming stories that inspire, uplift, and change the way we see the world. Remember, together we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. Echo's story is just the beginning. Join us in making the world a better place for all our heroes. Subscribe now, and let's continue to make a difference, one story at a time.